Hello and welcome to this top 10 list of farmable story mode characters from OPTC. When making this top 10 list, there were many aspects of a unit that we had to consider when deciding where to place them. Not just their captain ability, special and stats, but also where they appeared within the story and how viable they would be for new players, as well as how much longevity they would have as a unit. Please remember, this list is only our opinion, and if you feel differently, you can you can let us know in the comments below. So here we go.
Jump.
At number 10 we have Mr. One, the Human Sword. You can find him at stage 8 of Alubana. Mr. One's captain ability increases Slash's attack by ×2 and reduces damage received by 10%. His special reduces damage received by 50% for 1 turn and boosts his attack of Slashers by 1.25 for 1 turn. Number 10 is always the most difficult spot on a top 10 because it's basically saying who is just about able to get into this list. And we thought Mr. One was applicable for this spot because he doesn't excel that much, but he's a good replacement if you can't get Koza, who is a rare recruit. He has decent stats, and his viability throughout most of the game remains reasonably good. He's a slasher, which is always good for free-to-play players because slasher is one of the best classes for people playing free-to-play because it's easy to get a good captain for that class. So he's not pivotal, but he's not a terrible character to have at any point in the game. At number 9 we have Ima Alvida, who can shockingly be found in Alvida's hideout in chapter 3. It could be easily argued that she could be much higher. Throughout a majority of the game she has a very useful special that reduces damage received for 1 turn by 80%. So why did we put her here? Well, firstly, you can get Alvida from the fortnightly events, which reduces the necessity of farming her from the story mode. And also, she only becomes most useful when her special is maxed to 9 turns, whereas it is normally 15 turns before you max it. So it is somewhat pointless farming her in the early game, but it is never a bad thing to have a special that stalls you 1 turn. Her stats are quite good and she's fairly easy to level, being one of the earlier characters that doesn't take that much experience to level her up. She appears early in the story and so requires a small amount of stamina to farm, and so can be farmed repeatedly, easily. If you can't wait for the fortnight, she's worth farming.
理解できたかしら? 私はトゲトゲの実のトゲ人間。体中のどこからでもトゲを出すことができるんです。
At number 8 we have Miss Doublefinger, the Human Sprite, who can be found at stage 9 of Alubana. She has one of the only specials, or in fact, the only special that boosts the attack of Dex characters. So in terms of team building, she retains value, as on any Dex team she would be useful, which is great for new players who will be easily able to make a Dex team with free-to-play Zoro, but her stats leave much to be desired. On the whole, I'm not convinced, but she has a very niche special that has yet to be filled by any other character, and so deserves perhaps a low place on this list. At number 7 we have Impact Usopp, who can be found on chapter 7 of Water 7. It's a lot of 7s. Sharing many similarities with Miss Doublefinger, Impact Usopp boosts side units by ×2 for 1 turn. But he clearly wins out over Miss Doublefinger, as his special doesn't boost by 1.5 but ×2. And also he's integral for one of the best side burst teams. You can edit that. Again, his stats are very poor, but ×2 attack multipliers are very powerful in this game, and so he is well worth getting. At number 6, it gets complicated. We have the CP9 Duo, Kaku and Rob Lucci. They share the 6th place on this list as they can both be found on chapter 15 of Water 7. But the similarities don't end there. They both have 2 separate forms, all of which have very good orb manipulation effect and good stats. However, because they both appear together on one stage, it is difficult to farm them exclusively, and so you may end up farming them for twice as long, if not more, than most other characters. And as you may need 2 copies of each of them to get both of their evolutionary forms, this could go into way more farming than you might want to have to do. They also appear very late in the story, and so you may already have superior unit. But their orb manipulation is very versatile and is a good addition to any type-based team. So I'd recommend getting one of each and then evolving the appropriate way dependent on your team dynamic.
ぐちぐち言ってる暇があったら裏口からとっとと店を出ろ。
俺は残って戦うぜ。
At number 5, we have Chef Zeff. He can be found at chapter 3 of Barati. At first glance, Zeff seems like a pitiful character with very low stats and a mediocre special, which changes strength orbs into dex orbs. So how did he make it this far up the list? Well, firstly, he appears very early in the story. This is great for new players. He is also one of the only farmable characters who boasts a 2.5 multiplier captain ability. This is great for new players looking for a powerful captain to get some progress in the story, and for any Fortnite quests that are restricted to fighters. The fact that Zeff appears very early is very good for new players, regardless of his poor longevity in the later stages of the game where his poor stats would limit him, and fighters become outclassed by strikers and slashers. At number 4, we have Mr. Free. Very confusing. He can be found on chapter 11 of Little Garden. Mr. Free has made it this far up the list because he does a few things very well. His special allows him to stall one turn, which is a rare and useful utility. He's a slasher, which is arguably the best class, and he has reasonable stats. He's a good replacement on any team for GPU if you need someone who also does damage on, for instance, an all-slasher team. However, it's often better to have a 3-turn stall on one less attacker than one more attacker and only a 1-turn stall. But you can never have enough stall, so just run them both. Just remember they don't stack. He's been placed this far up the list for his high utility and usefulness, but in terms of his sheer necessity for your teams, it's reasonably low, so leave farming him until slightly later on in the story. In terms of stats as an int slasher, he gets outclassed by our next entry on the list.
この俺を誰だと思ってる。てめえのような口先だけのルーキーなんざ。
Crocodile, Warlord of the Sea, coming in at number 3. He can be found on chapter 15 of Alubana on both stages 1 and 10, giving you 2 chances to nab him. In terms of raw stats, he is the best character on this list, boasting a HP of almost 3000 and an attack of almost 1400. He has 2 evolutionary lines, but I would recommend first getting the slasher one, as you have probably gathered at this point. In my opinion, and in most people's opinion, slasher is the best class. However, the striker version has a better special, which does heavy poison, whatever that is. Crocodile is the best init slasher non-legendary in the game. His captain ability gives a ×2 multiplier to slashers and reduces damage by 20%. His special gives him an init orb and randomizes the rest of your orbs and does some damage. He's very good at all stages of the game because he has very high stats and so will always be a good damage outputter. It may be difficult for anyone in the earlier stages of the game to place him on a team as his crew cost is quite high, but that doesn't matter later on in the game. If you are watching this as a veteran player, this is the character I 100% recommend farming out if you don't already have him, because his huge stats will be nothing but beneficial to your slasher teams. At number 2, we have Lagoon, the whale, who can be found on both chapters 9 and 10 of Twin Capes. By far the most unique character on this list, with a captain ability that prevents you from losing the game if your HP is above a certain amount before you are attacked, specifically above 50% HP. So why is he here? Lagoon is arguably one of the most important characters for new players to grind out because it allows them to do some of the more difficult raids that they otherwise would be unable to do in order to get good captains for the future, such as Mihawk, Monster Chopper and Garp. He's also very useful as you do not have to level him at all once you get him. It's very easy to build a team around Lagoon, but it's quite difficult if you don't have the correct friend captain available. He has little to no use later in the game, but his sheer necessity in the early parts of the game for getting yourself good raid boss captains puts him, in my opinion, deservedly in the second place on this list. And at number 1 we have Arlong, who can be found on chapters 14 and 15 of Arlong Park, shockingly. So you're looking at this and you're thinking, why the f
have they placed a character that you can clearly get in the Fortnite in their #1 position for farmable characters from the story mode.
Well, I don't know either, but we're gonna try and work it out. Arlong can be summed up in one word: attack. For such an early game character who is quite easy to level, he has a mammoth 1,500-ish attack, which is, as of recording this, the 3rd highest attack on global. Not only that, but he has quite a low crew cost and a decent captain ability for new players, which boosts Slash's attack by ×2. His special is garbage, but we're going to ignore that. So you're asking yourself, why not just wait for the Fortnite to get Arlong? Well, it's simple. He's just simply too good. For new players and experienced players alike, if they have yet to encounter the Arlong Fortnite, then it's well worth farming him out, as his sheer attack power is a benefit to any team, and he can easily help new players run through some of the earlier stages in the story mode and a lot of the Fortnites. He's great for both strength and slasher teams, and even into the later parts of the game he remains useful. So even though many of you will moan that he's not necessarily important to farm out because he has a Fortnite, I would argue that as you only need 1 copy of him, and if his Fortnite is not soon to return, then he's well worth farming out because of his sheer power. Well, that's it for this top 10 list. No doubt you disagree with many of my opinions and the opinions of my team, who honestly I disagree with as well. So share your lists in the comments down below. We're interested to hear what your opinions are. And if we missed anyone that you think is important, please let us know. Also, if you haven't already checked out our previous videos, give them a look. Please like and subscribe for more OPTC content. Also, please follow us on Facebook and Twitter. The links are down below. That's all from me. See you next time, my nakama!